afternoon, namaskar, pilpahal vanakkam. Welcome to this panel discussion on modernizing India's gateways, that is ports as engines for growth. I have two very wonderful panelists here, Mr. Girish Thomas, who is the Chief General Manager of JNPA, Jawaharlal Nehru Port Authority, and Mr. Pranab Jha, Executive Vice President of JSW Steel. On my personal behalf and on behalf of my colleague panelists here, we would like to thank The Week magazine for giving us this opportunity. And this Maritime Conclave is very close to our hearts, as it started from Chennai last year. And it was our pleasure and honor to be associated with this beautiful event, which brings all the stakeholders of maritime sector together and deliberates on different aspects which are of concern to this sector. And a lot of brainstorming discussion happens. And what is the most beautiful part of it, what Mr. Riyad said in the morning, that within a week of this entire exercise, a report is prepared and it is made available to the Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways. And that way, it is not only the discussion part which happens, but a solid, concrete output comes, which helps in guiding the policy making in the country, and also what are the practical difficulties being faced by various stakeholders, and what can be the solutions. Now, as far as maritime sector is concerned, it's very important if our nation was to achieve the goal of becoming a developed nation by 2047. I would not like to go into the statistics of what is required to be done to reach that goal, but I come from the land of Tamil Nadu, where in the 1st century BC itself, Avayar had told, Thirai Kadal Odium Dirvayam Tedu. So Thirai Kadal means the wave of oceans. Odium, you cross that ocean. Dirvayam is wealth. Tedu is search. So more than 2000 years ago, she said that if you have to attain prosperity, if you have to get wealth, then you have to cross the oceans. And that is what our Honorable Prime Minister is also telling us to do, when he is putting a lot of focus on maritime sector, and thereby he is considering it to be a very important pillar in our objective of becoming a developed nation by 2047. That is when we complete 100 years of our independence. Now, if we were to look at ports specifically, we have been talking about different aspects of maritime sector, but this panel discussion is specifically for the ports. So when we look at the ports, there are 4 very important aspects that are important to us, and that is what I intend to discuss with my fellow panelists today. And one is, of course, that capacity expansion. What are we looking at that? How it is done internationally, how it is being done in our country. Then capacity expansion, an important aspect of that is also technology absorption. What are the latest technologies and how, in tune with what is happening internationally, we are also adopting them in our ports. We all know, I don't think we can stress enough the importance of connectivity for the ports. That also is something which I'll be trying to get the information on for benefit of all of us. And then what is very important in today's context, when we are looking at environment, is sustainability. So how these port infrastructure, port facilities, port operations especially can be conducted in a sustainable manner. So we will try to cover all these aspects with our two panelists here. And since Mr. Girish Thomas is involved very deeply with the development of the 13th major port, which is happening at Vadhvan, and that entire effort is being led by JNPA. Mr. Girish, we would like to know from you, because there are, ultimately when we look at the history of the major ports in India, then the oldest one is Kolkata, which started in 1870, and then Mumbai 1873, and then Chennai in 1881. I have the good fortune of being associated with Chennai for last 4 years, and I am also associated with Kamarajar Port as for last 2 years as chairman, and before that 4 years chairman come managing director. So I see a lot of difference, like Chennai Port being an old port, where from 1881 it's almost 144 years now, and Kamarajar Port is the youngest major port, just 24 years old. I see how when a port evolves, and because the things are changing, we have to really do a lot of crystal gazing. We have to see what is going to happen in future, so that there's a minimum disruption in how we are doing our activities today. So now that you have taken this initiative of establishing the Greenfield project of Vadhvan Port, which is designed to handle some of the world's largest container vessels, and it is the aim of the government that it should enter into the league of top 10 container ports in the world. So what is the roadmap for Vadhvan Port, and how do you see it complementing JNPA in positioning India as a global leader in port infrastructure and trade? So of course, I'll be requesting you to answer this question, but I think in order to better pass on the information to our audience here, you are also planning to have some small slide presentation also. Please go ahead.
So I'll just start with what sir was telling. In fact, I see a lot of youngsters in the backside. So let me start with some basics, because when I was at your age, in fact, I also used to come and sit like this and last, but many a time I don't understand many things which is told, because these are all big things. So let me start with basic fundamental. How many of you sitting on the back side knows what is a TEU? Can you raise your hand, whoever knows? Yeah, it's good that everybody of you knows the TEU, so therefore I will start telling what's a TEU. One TEU is one container, 20-feet container, that's all. We want to measure the containers by counting TEUs. So when you see a 20-feet container, we call it one TEU. If it's a 40-feet container, it's a 2 TEU. So because I will be talking a lot about TEUs in my discussion, so you may think, what is this TEU? So 20 equivalent unit, that's it. 20-feet container is one TEU. So let me see, you see, just to give a perspective, as sir was just now explaining that how India is trying to make itself a big a maritime force in the entire globe, we need to do a lot of things. So what is the picture, current picture? What are we planning to do? I will just explain in another 5-4 slides only that what we are doing from JNPA side. In India, as on 2025, if you look at, there are around 17 ports, 17 to 18 ports which are actually handling containers, both government and private put together. And we have something like 30 terminals. Terminal in the sense, one operator operating a terminal. He may have 1 berth, 2 berth, 3 berth, but like that, 30 terminals running in India. And all put together in a year. You know how many containers TEUs India is handling? Anybody from the backside? We are doing something close to 25 million TEUs, meaning 2.5 crore TEUs, that's all. But compared to that, how much is China doing? Anybody knows? Last year, China, how many TEUs they did? They did 345 million TEUs. You can just imagine the multiplicity or the difference between the container handling in India. In fact, China started it only in 2000, whereas we started much before that. But still, Chinese ports are this, I just wanted to show you the top 10 container ports in the world. You see, all those shaded one, that orange color, they are all Chinese ports. You see, among these 20 ports, volume, number of TUs, what you see in last year in China's first port, Shanghai port has done 51 million TUs, 5.15 crore TUs in a year. Whereas India as a whole is not able to do that much. It's only half of that. See, almost all those ports of Chinese ports, they're all much more than the whole of India. So among these 20 ports, none of the ports is from India. In fact, the first Indian port to be in this list is the 25th one is that Mundra, and 27th is JNPA. Mundra is handling close to 8 million TUs. JNPA handled last year 7.3 million TUs. This year, we will touch 8 million. So what I am trying to say is that we have to go a long way. We are doing big things. We are doing many good things, but that's not enough. For example, if let's say our vision MI with 2030 is we should touch 50 million. From 25 million, it's a tough task, but it is achievable. We can do that. And we are aiming at touching 100 millions by 2047. So what is to be done? We need to have ports, we need to have industries, we need to have a lot of things. Not just having one port is not sufficient. Of course, you have to have many more things. So government as such is doing this in all sectors. You can, if you are watching the ministries, all the ministries' activities, you will see a lot of programs, a lot of activities happening in all sectors of ministries, be it commerce ministry or railway or road or shipping. All ministries are striving to achieve this Amrit Kal vision. So in line of this, we in the ministry also, our Ministry of Shipping is also looking at developing mega ports. I would say mega ports, because these ports are what is called mega ports. Ports like JNPA, you can't call it a. In fact, many of you who are based from Kerala, you might have heard big news, and of course it's a great thing happened that we had a very good port, very efficient and very beautiful port at Vizhinjam near Kovalam. I have once visited it. It's a fantastic port, and they have adopted all the beautiful latest technological thing, but it is still operating as a transshipment port. Can anybody know what is a transshipment? Anyway, that's what I'm saying. I'm using a lot of jargons. Perhaps many of you may think that ye kya baat kar rahe. Transshipment means cargo coming from some other country, coming temporarily landed in one place and then again go to some other country. So it's a transshipment. It's just getting transshipped from one country to another country through this port. So Vizhinjam is currently operating as a transshipment port. Maybe in the future, they may also start getting gateway cargo. Currently, a lot of the transshipment, Indian cargo is transshipped through Colombo, Singapore, Salalah, and even Port Klang. So Vizhinjam is an alternative to these ports. However, for gateway port, 70% of the Indian gateway in the sense originating or destination in India, cargo is either received by some consignee in India or being exported by a consignee in India, is done through two major ports. One is two ports. One is Mundra and another one is JNPA. But what happened is that Mundra is also 90% capacity full, 8.5 million capacity. They are 8 million. JNPA was still last January 7.7 million capacity. We were doing 7.3 last year. This year we are touching 8 million. So this year in the month of March, we have commissioned one more new terminal. That's why we are now 10 million capacity port in India, which is the biggest port as far as container is concerned. But I'm sure within next 2 years down the line, we will touch 10 million also. Therefore, we are also going to get saturated. Therefore, JNPA has been entrusted by the Ministry of Shipping to construct a new mega port called Vadhvan. This port is located at the district of Palghar, which is in the north of Maharashtra. You can see that green spot. I don't know whether it's visible. It is between, just close to the border of Maharashtra and Gujarat. It is 150 kilometers north of Mumbai. It's a deep draft port. It's a greenfield port. I will just talk a couple of minutes about this. Sir, we can, 10 minutes is okay, na, sir? 10 minutes is fine, na, sir?
Yeah, 10 minutes are okay. And you continue speaking in the mic because in between, once in a while.
Okay, right, sir, sure. So this port is basically developed as a SPV, special purpose vehicle. Just again, another jargon youngsters may not know, but just to understand, it's a collaboration. It's a consortium of JNPA having 76% of stake, and Maharashtra Maritime Board is having, there are all the major ports are coming under the central government, Ministry of Shipping, whereas all the non-major ports, which is private owned or local ports, are being governed by the respective states. So maritime boards are those boards which are looking after such ports. So this being a new port, we are partnering with the Maharashtra Maritime Board, and this port, after its commissioning, will be one of the top 10 container ports. It will come in one of the lists which I showed you in the first, because its capacity, ultimate capacity will be 24.5 million TEUs. And of course, we will be doing a lot of, because currently in JNPA, out of the 7.3 million TEUs, I am doing only 40,000 or 50,000 transshipment. Entire 99% of the cargo is OD cargo, gateway cargo. We don't do transshipment because there is so much of cargo available, so we don't have to do transshipment cargo. Whereas Mundra, in fact, even though they do 8 million TEUs, 1.5 million is transshipment. So here we are expecting that we will be able to do 6 million TEUs of transshipment. And it is connected to the nearest highway and even the railway line. So therefore, there won't be any problem of connect, because this, not only in the seaside connectivity, equally important is the landside connectivity. So landside connectivity is through the road and the rail, which we find in many of the cases that there will be certain bottlenecks because the land, the area will be getting developed. You see, as historically, around the ports, you see the city developing, and finally it will congest the port and city will be stopping that's what happened to the Kolkata, Chennai, and even Mumbai. So this port is going to be a slightly different port from what you have seen in India. You see, this is how the port looks. Hello. You see, this port is going to be around 5 kilometers into the sea. It is not on the shore. Unlike other ports which you see, they are all built on the shore, but this will be 5 kilometers into the sea, and we are going to reclaim 1,250 hectares of land in the sea. It is 20-meter deep sea, and there we are going to reclaim this land, and then we are going to connect to the land using 8-lane road as well as rail. And there will be a 10.4 kilometer breakwater. I don't know, people sitting in the back can understand what is a breakwater. In Malayalam, it is called Pulimuttu. Breakwater is basically to create a serene water inside, calm water, so that when ships are berthed, it is not affected with waves or anything else. So breakwater is a big construction. It will be 10.7 kilometer, 25 meter deep. It's a massive construction. The entire project costs 77,000 crore rupees. Out of the 77,000 crore rupees, 40,000 crore rupees will be for the infrastructure like reclamation, breakwater, all common facilities. 37,000 crore rupees will be development of terminals by private operators. It will be under PPP. All the terminals will be developed by private operators. We will have 9 terminals. This is one terminal. One terminal is 1 kilometer. Like that, there will be 9 kilometer, entire key length. So this project, and this is the only reclamation near the shore, which is for the administrative purpose. It will have also liquid terminals, 2 liquid terminals, 1 ro-ro facility, and 1 bulk terminal, and 9 container terminals. this project, first phase will be over by 2030, and second phase will be over by 2034. First phase will be the first 4 terminals, these 4 terminals. Balance 5 terminals will happen in 2034. Am I telling a little fast? It's okay? Thank you. So that's all about this thing. So maybe I can discuss more once sir will ask questions. These are some of the features of the project. Thank you, sir.
I think one thing which will be of interest to the audience will be that, of course, you talked about that, the first phase is 40,000 crores, but how it is being financed, because it's very important to understand how such a big project is financed. So you talked about 74%, 26% equity and all that. If you could tell those values, it will be really of interest.
So costing, with respect to costing, even though we are taking 76% equity and 24% by MG, it is not the entire project cost. It is only the equity for forming the SPV. The cost required for the entire thing will be of loan. 30% will be loan and 70%, 30% will be the equity share and 70% will be debt. So that is how the project is conceived. And in this first phase, what I have suggested is that 4 terminal, for that 4 terminal, the preliminary work which is to be carried out is, there has to be a shore protection for the reclamation and the reclamation of land, and then you have to have the connectivity and breakwater. So these things are to be constructed prior to finding out the operator, for which government has decided for breakwater, it will be done on EPC. Port will invite tenders and we will be awarding contract for breakwater. It comes to 3,500 crores. For that, port will have to go for a loan. For reclamation of the land, shore protection and dredging, it is to be done through HAM. I hope everybody knows what is HAM. HAM is hybrid annuity model, meaning something like what you see in the roads. If you go to the national highways, you will see the tolls. What they do is that the infrastructure will be created by a private party and he will get annual annuity from the port on a long-term basis. For example, 30 years or 40 years. So the cost will be spread across and port will be collecting these charges through its either the vessel charges or the levies, whatever it is. And this is a model which has been very successful in almost all the road projects, and even now all the marine projects also, ministry is now deciding that we use HAM model, so that dredging as well as shore protection and the reclamation, it comes to around 20,500 crores of this amount will be through HAM. Then balance, rail connection is being done by the Indian Railways. They are investing. For road, NHAI is doing it. And for water and electricity, Maharashtra, water is by MJP and electricity by State Electricity Board. So they are investing, but all for that government is supporting. After this basic infrastructure is done, then comes the terminals, operational portion. So whoever terminal which is coming and taking a tender to develop the tender, that person will have to develop the quay, cranes, yards, all activities related to the operation of the terminal. I hope you understand the model.
Thank you, Mr. Girish. Now I come to Mr. Pranab Jha, the Executive Vice President, JSW Steel. So you have had extensive experience in maritime business development and strategic planning. And you were involved in planning and development of the Jurong Port, Singapore. So if you could tell our audience about what was your experience in planning and developing the Jurong Port in Singapore, and if any lessons are there which will be useful while developing the Indian ports.
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I think Mr. Thomas actually has set the context for me to actually go back and contrast how Singapore looked at the same thing about 20, 25 years back. I'll just give you a few glimpses, I think. So Singapore, most of you are aware, is scarce of land. Land is always a challenge and a premium. So when the whole, and also indicated in the chart by Mr. Thomas was that Singapore is number 2 in terms of the total throughput volumes which it does on containers. The challenge for Singapore in the early 2000s was to obviously compete with the likes of Malaysia, China, and the other hub ports of Hong Kong. In the early part of 2000, actually, Tanjung Pelepas, one of the ports which is very close to Singapore, was conceived as an alternate to Singapore for the transshipment business, which is in Malaysia. And Singapore actually got a jolt, stating that if such a port comes into existence, the whole maritime or the container handling monopoly, I won't use the word monopoly, but at least its key strength would be challenged. Singapore as it is very interesting. I think they got onto the drawing board and they took the challenge. And at that time, roughly, I remember in the early 2000s, Singapore used to have 7 million TEUs of 7 to 10, roughly around there, million TEUs of total volume being handled. Most of the terminals in Singapore used to be in the mainland. So probably geographically, if people are aware, Pasir Panjang and area surrounding the southern coast of Singapore mainland, which used to be again a very premium land. Interestingly, the government realized that capacity expansions would be a big challenge given the land constraint. They went in to something very similar, which Mr. Thomas indicated, which I think currently a lot of you may be aware of, is called the Tuas Megaport. So coincidentally, I was part of the initial group which was conceiving or conceptualizing the entire Tuas Megaport, and this was way back in the early, mid 2000s roughly. And just for at that time, the volumes were close to 10 million, and Singapore was talking of making a megaport of 65 million TEU. That sort of number. So in fact, most of the times when you used to have discussions, people used to be really worried, but then they backed their instinct. I think the first phase is already on, if I'm not wrong, and it continues to be actually competing. Singapore as a cluster is competing and competing well with the global ports. Also, one of the things which is very remarkable and to notice in the list which Mr. Thomas showed, most of the top ports you find is China based. So China obviously is a big production center. Lots of OD cargoes, so basically origin or destination cargoes. It's not typically a transshipment concept in China. Therefore, there is a easier to probably increase your volumes if your production or manufacturing goes up. And there is a tendency that most of the containers would move through those clusters, hinterlands, into the sea and into the export markets. Singapore, by that way, is very unique. It doesn't produce as many containers or manufacturing goods, but obviously it attracts a lot of transshipment. So if for us as a country or in India, for us to be attracting, obviously just mere physical infrastructure may not be the end all. There is a whole ecosystem of container shipping apart from the whole maritime cluster. I think there is a lot of emphasis I've seen with the government putting into maritime clusters, which has got to do with right from manpower training to probably bunkering to ship repair. I think earlier sessions or anything and everything to do with class, certification, these all ecosystem. And obviously one of the key things that time when we were analyzing with Tanjung Pelepas, one of the things we actually saw the competitive advantage for Singapore was proximity or close to an international airport. That's one of the critical factors in a development of big or mega transshipment or mega port, is to have a proximity to a good international well-connected port. So one of the things which we at that time analyzed was the proximity, because obviously when a ship calls, I think there are hundreds of other activities apart from cargo loading, unloading, which happens. So typically, if you are close proximity to a big cluster or a big metro or big airport internationally connected, it does help. As far as I think, obviously these are the physical infrastructure. So I think I'll just take some time to explain in terms of the softer part of success, which probably countries like Singapore have been able to do, is also because if you look at their maritime sector, probably they are about 7 to 8% of the GDP of Singapore roughly. So they put lots of emphasis on maritime sector, including all and every aspects of maritime development, whether it's ship repair, shipbuilding, and ship finance, or every other aspects. So one of the things which they used to do, which is very different from here, what I see, obviously India also, they have come a long way. I think they've become better. Also we have become safer, and we are much in line with our growth path. However, we still need to do major catch-up. Every time in every seminar or every such get-together, we always hear that India's logistics cost is high. I think that's true. But then some of the steps which we need to take are still very conceptual. I haven't seen much translating on the ground as such. Obviously, there are certain steps which have been taken, I think may have an impact going ahead. But currently, I think still lots of systems and processes which we have require a serious relook as far as port operation is concerned. I think the other aspect which I want to just highlight is we are living in a competitive landscape. Every time we usually keep comparing ourselves with China. I think we need to probably look at what are the things they do. And obviously, you and as a democratic country, we can't do everything what they do. But at least some of the steps which they are doing, or they are doing good, which can be, I would use the word copied or actually inspired. We should look at that aspect. Obviously, the other aspect is the location of ports in a cluster. I think what Vadhvan probably has done is actually being close to Mumbai is a great sort of location with the whole consumption and manufacturing sector being, manufacturing sites being close to Mumbai. But similar development of ports need to be done. I think, as you mentioned, Mr. Paliwal, that most of the ports were like 1880s. I think India, we haven't really looked at ports, for example, a newer greenfield site ports from the government side of it. Obviously, private sectors will have their own challenges in terms of financing and the scale and size which we are talking of. But creation of at least 5 to 6 megaports, something like what Mr. Thomas mentioned, probably one of them is this. There are definitely possibility of making some bigger and more sort of ports in India. I think if we are doing 20 million and you have to even make it 10 times by 2047, you are looking at 200 million. For that, you'll require at least 8 to 10 such ports in India to match that sort of capacity and use. So yeah, that's what I would like to highlight right now.
Thank you. In fact, your insight into the difference between how China had sort of very good predictability about what capacity additions will be required, because they are mainly an exporting country. Whereas for Singapore, it is a bit difficult because, transshipment, you don't know how much you will get or how much Palapas or Port Klang will take from you. And I think it also helps us in understanding that, why they are also able to shift, because they are mainly transshipment. So first, I think the location was where this Marina Bay Sands has come now. Now the second location, and the 2Rs is also getting developed. Maybe this also will be taken as a real estate. Now there's one question which I want to ask you, and I'm sure it will be of interest to many of our audience here, is that, definitely we have to increase capacity, and presently we are around 2,600 million tons per annum capacity, and our goal is to reach 10,000 by 2047. So it will need a lot of investment, a lot of planning. What is your take on, whether we should go for mega ports, which of course is there in the Amrit Kal Vision Plan and even Maritime India Vision, where there is a target to establish mega ports on both the east coast and west coast of India. But at the same time, we see that, state governments are also giving licenses and ports are getting developed, and even Government of India is also increasing the capacity in the existing major ports. What is your take on this, whether we should go for mega ports or we should go for these ports which are at a short distance from each other, but they are able to provide better hinterland connectivity?
I think in my view, if India has to be an export-driven economy, and that's what if India is looking at, creating mega ports would be a better option, because I think if smaller ports are developed, I think ecosystem in and around would be very, very fragmented. So if you look at any cluster, typically, for example, Shanghai, I think it's a good example. Obviously, it's blessed by a river very close by, Yangtze. Therefore, you have the entire ecosystem in and around it, and therefore, lots of export-driven units are situated, and therefore, their cost of exports or their cost of logistics is far sharper than what we have in India. I think, to me, having a mega port with lots of export-driven units or EOUs, whatever you call it, would be a better and a more sustainable option, given the background or difficulty in today land acquisition, environment clearance, delays, smaller scales could obviously have challenges. So probably government getting into something to create a basic framework and then allowing private sectors to probably do the PPP model, which is currently being done. So in my view, that's a more robust and better option, just to expedite the overall implementation. Because if smaller ports, typically if you see in the Indian coast, there have been few success stories. I think we need to take lessons from them. But lots of smaller ports, which the state maritime boards have been sort of giving, haven't really come to the fore. So there are few success stories, but I think still way to go.
Okay, taking on from there, where you have very rightly pointed about the importance of developing an entire ecosystem, which will be better if we are having mega ports, where this entire ecosystem sort of comes up. So I think taking from there, there's one very good initiative which JNPA has taken, and it is a part of one of the pillars of Sagarmala, the flagship program of our ministry, where it talks about port-led industrialization. So Jawaharlal Nehru Port is one of the ports where they have taken up a SEZ. So I think we would like to know from Mr. Girish Thomas, what has been the experience?
Thank you, sir. In fact, there are SEZs, so many, more than 200 SEZs all across India. But JNPA SEZ is a very unique phenomenon. In fact, it is developed, as Sir has suggested, based on the port-led industrialization policy of the Ministry of Shipping. In fact, we have identified around 280 80 hectares of land, which is free from any encumbrance, either of CRS or whatever it is. It's all free from that, and it is just 5 kilometers away from the port terminals. All the we got 5 terminals, container terminals at JNPA, and this 280 hectares of land, out of it, around 170 hectares is leasable. Balance 100 hectares is for the common facilities, roads, other utilities and others. But 170 hectares of this land has been, we are giving it on lease through tender. You know, in fact, I would like to give a couple of indications. Initially, we were able to get 5% 10% above the reserve price because it was around 5,000 rupees per square meter. And we, you know, this particular project is given 60 years contract. Normally our PPPs are given for 30 years, but this is for 60 years lease. And there are two sets. One is the co-developer type thing and another one is the unit. The units, they can avail all the facilities of the SEZ law. Like they can avail duty-free, they can avail this electricity, all activities which is not applicable to the DTA is there for SEZ people. So even the MAT, this minimum tax is also very limited, 15%. So therefore it's so attractive that by now, almost our 75% of the land has been leased out. And the last one, it has gone from 5,000 to 25,000 rupees. It's so huge now. Big companies like Welspun, many big companies are now looking for getting, but now we are not able to give. And in fact, there are now currently already 10 units operating. One FTWZ owned by DP World is operating, and they are all big success stories, something which can be looked at and you can replicate. And in fact, the success of JNPSC said has at least brought in such a goodwill that Tanzania government wants JNPA to go there and construct an SEZ, which we are expecting to do in the next 1 year time. So SEZ is, and in fact, the special status of the SEZ containers to come and go from the port is also something which is very, customs is also in sync with the SEZ is coming under the development commissioner, different commissioner, not in this custom, but they are actually working together to make it a big success.
Coming back to Mr. Jha, you know, from this side of the table, you move to that side of the table. You were involved in planning and developing a port, and then, you know, now you are looking after the logistics of JSW Steel. So now you have, to some extent, become customers of ports. So what has been your experience and what are your expectations?
Yeah, I think in my current role, obviously, I look at the entire logistics and shipping. So obviously, ports are my general partners. So at JSW, practically we use all the ports in India. I think it's one of the few groups. I don't think any port in India where we don't handle or have our presence. But that's a good part. The ports in India actually have come a long way. So if I look at my last 15, 17 years experience in this organization and dealing with ports, I think there has been a tremendous improvement. I think earlier, I remember we used to have shipments come in, maximum Panamax size shipments. So now most of the shipments which we try and bring are in Cape. So now in India also, I think there are at least 5 or 6 ports which are Cape compliant. I'm only talking with respect to bulk and break bulk shipments. So I think, as most of you may be aware, or earlier speaker did mention, steel is one of the most logistic cost-sensitive sector. Actually, for every ton of steel, roughly 3 tons of raw material is required. So that's the multiplier, apart from the fourth, which is actually the outbound steel production itself, or the finished goods or finished product itself. It's hugely logistic intensive. Most of the ports which we now use are, we prefer to use the Cape ports. obviously for a reason that we are able to get economies of scale in terms of our sea freight cost. Also, we look at uh, overall number of ships which we bring into the port, because I think one of the key consideration is if you have more number of ships come to a port, the demurrage numbers or the waiting times do increase, because there is always the pre-berthing, initial idle time, and subsequently idle time. These eat into the typical berth occupancy. So if on an average in a year we have close to 1,000 to 1,200 ships which we charter or we bring into India, which is a big number. So obviously, upscaling the size of ships is one of the key considerations we have. This also helps, and obviously I mentioned, to reduce our overall logistics cost. The challenge obviously comes with respect to, it's not only the ships. I think it's not only the crane and the cargo in a port, but then there are issues with connectivity, issues with coordination, issues with in terms of making the, again, I mean, in terms of interacting with the interface, customs, for example. These are some of the challenges which we have. I would say things have improved definitely, but I do feel there has to be even better coordination, and I would put it ease of doing business. I think I still feel as a user that sometimes things are dragged a bit longer than it should without much value added. So as a user, that's something which is of concern. Also, I would like to touch on probably for the export market. I think we are also one of the largest exporters of steel. Obviously, in India, we export the highest. The challenge with respect to export is most of our exports either go from Ennore or go from JNPT. Things have improved again there. That's the positive part of it. Whether it's sufficient, maybe no, because the customers also in today's world, everyone is got used to Instamart and stuff like that. So every customer for us also has become more demanding in terms of timelines, in terms of cost, in terms of visibility, tracking. All these have become very, very normal, which used to be very different 10 years back. So there is something which we need to work collaborating with the ports here so that we are able to be competitive in the international market as far as our products are concerned.
So it's heartening to know that things are moving in the right direction, but maybe you would like them to move faster. Okay, so now, I mentioned four aspects of modernizing port infrastructure. Three we have covered already. So that was, capacity and connectivity and technology absorption. So the last one is sustainability. So I would like to hear from both of you. So for example, even our ministry has been laying a lot of stress on sustainability and has come up with the Harit Sagar guidelines. So as a mandate, the ports are taking action in that direction. So specifically, we would like to know, because you also run your own ports and you are a big logistics user in the country. So both from Mr. Girish Thomas and Mr. Jha, if we could quickly, because of the lack of time, if we could quickly throw some light on, what are the steps that you are taking towards sustainability?
Thank you. Sir, that's something which I forgot to talk when I talk about. Sir, sustainability is something which is very, very primary important nowadays. And in fact, JNPA, not only in JNPA, even in Vadhvan, we are taking care of it. JNPA per se, sir, if you see our terminals, all the 5 terminals, we have put a mandate that they should go into green power. For that, what we have done is that each terminal is operating something close to 150 trucks, trailers, to transfer the container from the quay to the yard. That is their own trucks, apart from the trucks which are coming from outside to pick the container. These internal trucks all 5 terminals has been given instruction that by 2026 end or middle of 2027, all these 500 trucks should be converted into electric trucks, and the power which is to be used by these electric trucks will be the green power, which we are going to wheel through the grid from the green sources. Like we have a lot of green power available in other parts which are wheeled through the grid. That is the power which currently our terminal, PSA terminal, BMCT is 100% green power. Other terminals are 40, 50% like they are already green. So by end of this decade, we will be 100% green power. This is with respect to Vadhvan, JNPA. And with respect to Vadhvan, we have already laid down in this thing that it should be 100% green, and therefore the sustainability is something which is most primary important as far as our vision is concerned. That's what we are doing.
For us, I think the footprint is quite wide. Actually, if I look at from steel point of view, I think steel as a sector is having a very high carbon load. So there is already internal targets to be one of the best in terms of, at least in terms of carbon footprint. Various steps are being taken, and it's already, I mean, lots of initiatives have been taken with respect to reducing the carbon footprint. That's from the steel manufacturing standpoint of view. Apart from it, the typical sort of other low-hanging fruits, if I can say, most of the plants today, all the internal logistics is done through fully battery trucks. All the staff movement is through battery mobility, which is cars or buses and stuff like that. Also, in terms of ports, we are looking to change most of the ports requirements to be fully green. I think coincidentally, we have one of our divisions or vertical called JSW Energy. It is very heavily into renewable space, where we are investing into solar, renewable fuel, hydrogen, other alternate fuels. Apart from it, wind energy, batteries. So there is lots of work which is going on, and that's definitely going to be very, very positive as far as the ESG targets are concerned. As far as the ship and shipping is concerned, I think we have, as I mentioned to you earlier, we move about 1,200 ships. We have already instructed most of the ships to come on eco. Obviously, it increases my cost, but as it does reduce the carbon footprint by about 7 to 10% roughly. That helps us in overall sort of reducing the carbon footprint. Also, we are looking at coastal shipping as a very important key step to avoid road and railway transportation. So we have very heavily invested, and Mr. Nair is here, he's smiling, yes. We have invested into smaller MBCs and also planning to actually invest in battery-propelled, fully battery barges. I think we would be the first one probably to do cargo on 100% battery, hopefully very soon with Mr. Nair. So hopefully that would be one of the steps which we want to take to ensure that we make some positive contribution in terms of our carbon footprint reduction targets are concerned.
We are going to start shore supply to the ships, sir. We are going to provide power supply from the berth so that the ships can switch on the engines, and that's our GTA berth. We are aiming to do it this financial year, and year by year we will start shifting the power supply facilities to all the other terminals. And our tugs also, we are now slowly moving into green tugs. In fact, 2 tugs next year we are going for green tugs.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, because yeah, that is something in line with what the ministry is also guiding in terms of supply of shore power and adoption of green tugs. Thank you, Mr. Thomas and Mr. Jha. It has been really nice to know about, because Honorable Prime Minister has given commitment of our nation that, you know, what we are going to achieve zero by 2070. So I think both private sector and public sector are moving in tandem in that direction. It has been wonderful interacting with you. And I think Mr. Riyad also will be happy with us, because we have again come to the proper timelines and we are ending our session properly, I think before 5:30. partly because I have to catch a flight to Chennai. So again, on my personal behalf and on behalf of the Week magazine, we would like to thank both of you for this enlightening interaction. Thank you.